All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating argument from our source material, the idea that the real value of a Tesla and SpaceX merger isn't actually about cars or rockets at all. It's about completely dominating the global AI landscape. As you'll see, a highly compelling narrative emerges here. The race for artificial general intelligence is accelerating fast, and the combined forces of these two companies might just be gearing up for a play that absolutely dwarfs their current business models.
The speakers in our source material argue that investors are missing the much bigger picture because they are just laser focused on robotaxis. There's this strong sentiment that some shareholders are stuck in a bit of a bubble, stubbornly refusing to see the value of a potential merger simply because they're worried the future profits of robotaxis aren't fully recognized in the stock price today. But here's the thing, waiting for robotaxis to fully mature, that could take years, and the opportunity cost of that delay could be absolutely monumental. So, to really wrap our heads around this massive shift, we're going to zoom out through 5 quick steps: the narrow view versus the big picture, combined financial firepower, owning the edge, data centers in space, and finally, the trillion-dollar endgame. Starting with Section 1, the narrow view versus the big picture. This brilliantly illustrates the core argument we're looking at. The speakers contrast a highly optimistic $50 billion robotaxi market against a staggering $30 trillion enterprise AI market that a merged entity could target. I mean, just think about that for a second. Even if Tesla gets 1 million robotaxis on the road and creates a highly profitable $50 billion revenue stream, it completely pales in comparison to the total addressable market of enterprise computing. By focusing only on the streets, they argue, we're ignoring a vastly larger, faster-moving economic wave.
Which brings us to Section 2, combined financial firepower.
So how do you even afford to compete in a $30 trillion market against heavyweights like OpenAI and Anthropic? Well, according to the analysis, pooling SpaceX's estimated $100 billion in cash with Tesla's $44 billion is the key. That combined war chest allows them to safely deploy massive capital for AI compute while keeping a very healthy safety reserve. In fact, a merged company could comfortably boost their AI spending by up to $40 billion more than they could on their own. In a market where building data centers requires just unbelievable amounts of cash, this combined financial safety net is literally an absolute necessity to survive and lead the pack. Now, check out this number, $3 billion. That is the estimated monthly cash burn for OpenAI right now, which perfectly illustrates the intense financial pressure of the current AI arms race. That's $3 billion going out the door every single month, and that's on top of additional capital expenditures. Yes, they've raised significant funds, but cash doesn't last long at that kind of burn rate. And that highlights exactly why the financial fortress of a merged Tesla and SpaceX is viewed as such a massive, game-changing advantage. The speakers also argue you have to consider the friction of corporate boundaries. Keeping these entities separate basically creates a 10% drag on time and effort. Merging them, that completely eliminates the clunkiness. It allows teams to seamlessly share common computing power and huge data centers, like Colossus, across what used to be corporate dividing lines. So instead of trying to coordinate through complex, drawn-out agreements, a merged ecosystem lets them execute at lightning speed.
All right, Section 3, owning the edge.
Okay, so this brings us to Edge AI, which is a really foundational concept in the source material. This is where computing power gets distributed directly into physical products. So instead of sending every single request back to some massive centralized server farm in the middle of nowhere, the processing happens right where the device is, in your hand, in your driveway, or in your living room. Just imagine millions of Tesla cars out there, literally acting like a globally distributed, interconnected supercomputer. The analysis points out that right now there's roughly a gigawatt of compute sitting in cars with AI-4 chips, but upgrading to AI-5, that multiplies the power by 4. Then you add in millions of localized Optimus bots equipped with incredibly powerful compute capabilities, and you suddenly create a massive decentralized network. The sources suggest this could even simulate up to 100 billion human agents by 2030, which vastly outnumbers the actual human population. Furthermore, they argue this physical edge network would tie right into a global financial system via X. The idea is to utilize Starlink to reach billions of phones, effectively mimicking China's WeChat ecosystem. When you integrate an AI like Grok directly into consumer finances to give personal spending advice, and then connect that directly to purchasing physical goods like Teslas or Optimus bots, well, you've just created a fully closed-loop ecosystem. Now let's zoom way out for Section 4, the orbital advantage. To really grasp SpaceX's dominance here, just look at this breakdown. The speakers note that SpaceX has launched roughly the same number of satellites in less than a decade as the entire rest of the world has in all of human history. That sheer volume is just unparalleled. This rapid, massive deployment completely sets the stage for what comes next in this AI war.
And this comparison is just mind-blowing. To put this future capability into perspective, the explainer compares the massive payload of the historic D-Day invasion to what fully reusable starships could launch into orbit in just a single year. D-Day landed around 400,000 to 500,000 tons of material. A fleet of fully reusable starships, they could be launching over 1 million tons into space. That is essentially a double D-Day invasion happening every single year.
Right now, the whole planet combined launches maybe 3,000 to 4,000 tons into space annually, but Starship projects to jump that to over 1 million tons. This dramatic increase, driven entirely by engine reusability, fundamentally changes the math of what's physically possible to build up in orbit. So what's the ultimate goal here? Orbital data centers. The source posits that by moving this infrastructure into space, the merged entity can entirely bypass Earth's terrestrial power constraints. Because reusability drops engine costs from $80 million down to under $1 million, they can effectively corner the market on getting heavy infrastructure off the planet. And once those AI data centers are floating in space, they generate incredibly cheap tokens that power enterprise AI, creating a closed-loop monetization system that works a lot like Apple's App Store.
Let's bring it all together in Section 5, the trillion-dollar end game.
The timeline our sources map out is incredibly aggressive. It moves from working reusable rockets today to a staggering $1.5 to $2 trillion combined valuation by 2030, and it's all driven by rolling out that edge compute and orbital infrastructure. By moving faster together, this analysis suggests they could comfortably hit $500 billion in combined annual revenue by 2028. But here is the real kicker. The speakers casually suggest that if AI profitability keeps its current high margins at that kind of future scale, the theoretical enterprise value could eventually spiral toward $40 trillion. We're already seeing companies today adding billions of dollars in pure annualized profit practically overnight. Doing that at a multi-planetary scale, that unlocks value we can scarcely even comprehend right now.
Ultimately, the explainer concludes that holding up a merger just because robotaxis aren't fully priced in right now is a massive opportunity cost. It completely misses the accelerating AI revolution. The speed of monetization in AI is happening today, and delaying this integration just slows down the compounding rate of innovation. Which leaves us with one incredibly massive question to consider as we wrap up. By staying hyper-focused on the streets, are we blinding ourselves to the trillion-dollar AI empire being built in the stars? According to this analysis, looking up might just be where the true future of this technology lies.